Okay, let's have a prayer. Dear God, thank you for this time, and thank you for all the things that archaeologists have dug up. We're only going to see just a few things here. There's so many thousands and millions of things probably. And I just pray that you guide us, help us to see how uh, archaeology has enlightened the Bible and helped us to realize that you can trust it. And I just thank you for this time and everybody here in Jesus' name. Okay, archaeology of the Bible. And we're going to talk about a few things, like I said. But note that only about 10% of the whole Bible could even be verified by archaeology because it's not accessible. It'd be very hard for you to prove that Jesus said something unless something's written. And it's hard. That's what my professor said. It's only about 10% of the Bible you can really verify, but that 10% is important because it really gives you the verification of of the truth that's behind it. And Natalie, since you were over in the Middle East, you were in Europe. If you have anything you've come across you want to share, please do so. This will be most of it will be coming from the Old Testament and what we talked about today. The first thing I want to talk about is what's called the maximalist debate. Basically, all this is that some people want to super minimize the Bible because they don't think it's true. They think it's fiction. Okay, so they don't take, if the Bible says something, they don't say it could be even possibly be true unless you can verify with archaeology or some other history. So there's a skepticism about what the Bible says historically. So minimalists do not accept anything in the Old Testament history as historical unless it can be verified by archaeology or some outside source. Maximalists, or the opposite, people who really believe the Bible is historical, have a high view of historicity of the record in the Bible history and accept what it says at face value, basically. And so a lot of the maximalists will look in the Bible and then they'll go do archaeology there because the Bible says it. The others won't take the Bible as where you go to try to dig up stuff. Even when faced with archaeological evidence, the minimalists at times do not concede to its veracity, to its truthfulness. For instance, there was a debate about the Tandel inscription. And this was just found in 1993, 94. There were two pieces that they found. It contains the term House of David. Now, why is that important? Because up until that time, they had no extra biblical evidence of the house of David or the idea that David even existed. Sorry about that. What am I doing here? I did that last time, didn't I? About knocked things over. But they didn't want to accept that David even existed, even though there's all kinds of biblical things about it, because that's where their presuppositions, that's their worldview, is that the Bible is basically just made up by people. So the minimalists, on the other hand, the minimalists not believing in the historicity of David claimed it to be a forgery. Even though they dug it up, we'll see a picture of it in a minute, they claimed it to be a forgery. And what's good is that as time goes on, new discoveries occur and archaeology seems to be on the side of the maximalists. Here you go. Here's that Tal Dan inscription. I've got me a big Linda's suggestion. This is the Hebrew word Beth Dawid. They write backwards. The Beth means house of David, Dawid. So you find that there, and they found one of these in 93 and one in 1994, and when they were doing some excavations in different places. So it's evidence that the house of David existed, and David must have existed. There wouldn't be a house of David if there wasn't. So again, lots of times people don't want to accept what the Bible says. They're anti-Bible, anti-supernatural, lots of times, not always. Some people are just, it's from a secular viewpoint. You don't take things that faith document says as historical necessarily. Not everybody's that way, just some. Then I'm going to go through, and you got your thing here. I'm going to be reading a lot of this. So if you want to follow along, please feel free to do so. This is Enuma Elish, Babylonian epic of creation. Now, I'm sure that you guys can read this, right? It's very legible. I don't know what it says. But these archaeologists and these paleographers and these people who study languages study things like this, and they can figure out what it says. There are 7 Assyrian tablets that contain this Enuma Elish. This copy is a third tablet of the older Babylonian text, 3.5 inches high. It's that big. Okay, they found that thing. And was found at Nineveh and dates approximately 650 BC. Here the god Marduk creates the human race and the world. It parallels Genesis. There's a similar sequence. You have the firmament or the sky created. You have a dry land, and then the celestial luminaries, the stars, the sun, the moon, and then humans are created. So it's interesting that this extra biblical creation account is similar to what the Bible says. There exist several other ancient creation epics as well. Now, if you want to go into this more in depth about these things in the Old Testament, a great book is this one called Archaeology of the Old Testament by Alfred Horace. He focuses just on the Old Testament. He goes through and he does all kinds of, it's just his specialty. Then when you go to the New Testament, there's another one here. This is Archaeology of the New Testament. And we're going to get to the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I've got books on that too. But the Egyptians had several ideas here. Not that other. This one is Babylonian. But the Egyptians also had theologies of creation that they dug up. They found, they wrote about. And this one, Memphis theology of creation, predates Abraham and is used to justify Memphis as a ruling city in Egypt. Here, a god called Ptah, you're spitting almost, Ptah, creates other gods, including Atum, the creator god. And so is first place among Egyptian gods. There's another one, the creation by Atum talks about Atum sneezing and creating 2 gods, okay? So there's different things going on. The hymn to Amun-Re is where Amun-Re creates man, beasts, fruit, trees, herbage, cattle, etc. So they talk about this. There's a Syrian epic of Gilgamesh. Now we're going from the creation account parallels. Now we're going to look at the flood accounts. Because the Bible talks about the flood, but there's many other accounts that talk about the flood as well. This here is the Epic of Gilgamesh on tablet 11 of the Syrian version of the Gilgamesh epic. It was found in Nineveh, dates the 7th century, divided into 12 tablets, and this one is tablet 11, contains the account of the flood. There are other versions of the Gilgamesh epic, which date from the 3rd millennium BC, which would be somewhere between 2000, where was that? That'd be 3,000 to 4,000 BC, I think. Anyway, the copies have been found in various parts of the Near East. 14th century fragment was found in Megiddo in Palestine. And so even though it was originated in the Mesopotamian area, it had gone so far as to also be in Palestine. And I think we looked at Megiddo. This epic parallels the biblical flood accounts in numerous ways. And look at these, how these ways. There, in this account of the flood, and if you know the biblical account, just think about that parallel. There are several dozen known traditions. One of them is found in the Sumerian king listed below. But let's go on here. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a Mesopotamian record. These are the parallels with the Genesis account. The flood was divinely planned. The flood was connected with the defection of the human race from the gods. a divine revelation to the hero of the deluge tells of the imminent disaster that no one else knows about. A ship is built, pitched inside and out. The family of the hero is saved. Living creatures that are to be saved are put on board. A storm brings on the flood. Everyone not in the ship is destroyed. The duration of the flood was specified. Ship lands on a mountain. Birds are sent out to see whether the water has receded. Sacrifices offered to and accepted by the deity. The hero receives a special blessing. There is reference to the possibility of no future flood. There's a lot of parallels there. What's going on? Was this one the one that happened, or was it the Bible the one that happened? Well, whatever the case is, however you decide on that, I think the Bible's right, but there's evidence that these ideas were out there and what was going on in that day. Now, interestingly, there's a Samaritan king list. A clay prism dates 2000 BC. And this clay prism records names and links of reigns of pre-flood and post-flood rulers, just like Genesis. Genesis talks about who came before in genealogy, and it talks about who came after the flood and how long they lived. It's interesting, 10 great men, it says, ruled before the flood, with lengths of reigns between 43,200 and 18,600 years. That's more than the Bible. Who was the oldest person in the Bible? Methuselah. How old was he? 969. Okay. The time spans are greatly reduced for the post-flood rulers, just like in the Bible. Before the flood, in this account, they lived thousands of years. After the flood, it was very much reduced. The same thing is in the Bible. If you look at it, before the flood, you have 969 years, almost 1,000 years. Methuselah, then after that, they gradually go down. You know, I don't know if I'd want to live 1,000 years. Anyway, at least not in this world. So this is a parallel that you can find about the king list, about what's in Genesis as well. So what? Well, it may give us some insight, maybe one of these days. What did these long ages mean? I don't think someone lived 43,000 years. But anyway, whatever the case is, this is archaeology brings us in to help us understand better what things might have been, what different things that are stated might have meant. Now, here's an example of early writing. It's a clay tablet, 3 inches square. Here you go. Real small. They found it, and it dates around 2900 BC. There was an allegation earlier, I don't know if it was 1900 or I'm not sure how far back, but it was an allegation that was turned back. Allegation said the art of writing was unknown until long after Moses. Therefore, there could not have been any written records that go back to the time of Moses. Thus, much of the first 5 books of the Bible are legend and myth. They were created later on. Well, after that time, after those allegations were come out, Ugaritic and Tas Shama tablets were discovered in 1400 BC in a language that related to Hebrew. And that would have been about the time Moses was writing, was about 1400. So they found these. Wow, writing did go back that far. There are hieroglyphic inscriptions found dated 1500 BC. They were called lower class miners' writing. Then they found pre-flood writings found in Ur and Kish, pre-Abrahamic libraries in Ur. They found Ur. Let's see, I didn't even know they could find that. Babylonian flood account, we just talked about that. Epic of creation, these things dated back to almost 2000 BC. Hammurabi's law code, you've probably heard of that from school. And it dates like to 750. In Egypt, thousands of inscriptions have been found which antedate Moses by 1,000 years. So the reason I bring this up is these are ancient writings nobody knew about for a long time. And so they were saying, well, writing didn't exist. Nobody wrote that early. And so you've got to take what the Bible says with grain of salt. Moses couldn't have been writing, and people in his day couldn't have written things. But you can find later on, they kept digging, and they found Mesopotamian writing that began 3200 BC. This is from it was called the Oriental Museum in Chicago. They've changed that. Here, Linda comes back, she can tell. But they felt like it was probably not politically correct. And so they changed Oriental Museum to something else. There was cuneiform writing they also found, which goes from about 2000 BC. And these are some of the tablets and things they found that they were writing on. And you go and you find these writing instruments. They found, this is what they used in some ink wells and other things that you see. They got places where you can dip ink in there, and just got other type of tools that they would use to write. And they found, what's this one? Let's see, this is just some more early writing instruments. I don't know how they do, but you can see how they actually wrote on this stone or whatever it is. You can see writing in there. Now, this is another thing, another turn back. Can someone read Genesis 12:16, please? Genesis 12:16. Okay, thank you. And then if someone else could get Genesis 24, let's see, 10, 14, and 19 through 20. Genesis 12:16, who has that? Okay, thanks. And the second one? Okay, the second one is Genesis 24, verses 10, 14, and 19 through 20. The first one is Genesis 12:16. Verse 16? Do you need a bigger print Bible?
No, I'm fine.
I brought mine from my house over there. Just for you if you want. Okay, what's 12:16 say, please?
All right. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels.
Oh, okay. They claim that before 1950, the people claimed there were no domesticated camels. Okay, but even though the Bible said that, no, it's not right. Okay, and what about Genesis 24, 10, 14, 19, and 20?
Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and left, taking with him all kinds of good things from his master. He set out for Aram Naharaim, and then made his way to the town of Nahor.
14 and then 19 and 20.
May it be that when I say to a girl, please down your jar that I may have a drink, and she says, drink, and I'll water your camels too. Let her be the one you've chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too, until they finish drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw more water, and drew it up for all of his camels.
Okay, thank you. So references to the camels of Abraham as part of his livestock, and by his servant to find Rebekah, were considered anachronistic. You know what that means? It means out of time. In other words, it didn't happen then. Maybe they brought it into the text. Later people brought it in when they did have camels. But that's not necessary. Because they based that on there's no clear evidence of any domestication of camels in that day, before 1950. So there's no clear extra biblical evidence, so it wasn't true. Even if the Bible or any other religious type thing would have said that. After 1950, the evidence was found to support the plausibility of Abraham using camels. There was a fodder list. Do you know what a fodder list is?
Like a motor list?
Fodder. What's fodder?
No, is it like a motor list?
Fodder.
And motor?
No, not fodder and mutter. No. It has to do with feeding.
Yeah.
Okay, a feeding list for camels. I see what you're saying. A feeding list for camels was dated 1000 to 1700 BC. And then an early Samaritan writing speaks, and this is before, about the time of Abraham, speaks of the use of camel's milk, which implies their domestication. Have you ever milked anything? Milk a cow. Okay. What's it like if they're not tame? Do you remember putting on kickers on the back knees of the cow so they didn't kick you? We had to put those on so we could milk that cow. Well, you're not going to milk a camel unless you sedate them or something, unless they're somewhat tame, okay, or somewhat domesticated. So if they were milking camels or using camel's milk, unless the camel was dead and they milked it then. No. So it brought up, this is how archaeology helps to reveal, yeah, these things really did happen. They're okay. They're not something that was made up necessarily by the people who wrote the Bible. There's now ample confirmation for their use in a number of town remains, which date only a century after Abraham. As early as 1800 BC, camels were used for the trans-desert traffic between Mesopotamia and Palestine. You can find that in biblical encyclopedias. So the point to be gleaned, just because there are no extra biblical evidence today for that which is stated in the Bible, does not show it to be necessarily an error. Its explanation or illumination may be discovered tomorrow. And they're continually uncovering things and verifying that what the Bible says is true. Slide 13, let's see what this says. This is a Mesopotamian pantheon. What's a pantheon? They're not panting like a dog, right? Pantheon. It's a list of the gods. Yeah. So Mesopotamia is a land between the rivers, near where Abraham came from. And there are many gods in the area. Here pictured are gods in the Mesopotamian pantheon for archaeology, that archaeology dug up. You can't see them really. This is also in the same museum as the others. They did exist. Remember, I told you about the 1,500 gods of, remember? Exodus, and there's about, Egypt had 1,500 gods. 1,500, remember? I've got that whole book on it, if you want to look at it. Well, here are pictured many of the gods that they found. Look at all kinds of things. I can't see exactly, but you can see different ones. These were all gods in Egypt. There's a lot of little things, not that big. Some of them are. So archaeology can help verify and also help illuminate what did they mean when they had these gods of Egypt. You remember the Israelites, when they left Egypt, they went out, and then, since Moses stayed up on the hill so long with God, what did they make?
Golden calf.
A golden calf out of gold, right? Well, see, they had calves like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? It was not abnormal for them to build. So you know that, okay, they built this calf. It was a god of Egypt. They wanted to go back to Egypt. And so these things are highlighted by these discoveries by the people who are archaeologists. Here's a statue of the god El. Now, Hebrew, the word El means, it's short for Elohim, which is another word for God. Okay, it can be any type of God, though. That's why Jehovah, or you call it Yahweh is a better translation, gave his personal name, because there's so many other Elohims out there. El means God. This is a statue from the 13th century BC in Canaan, the Canaanite god El, their chief god. He was the father of humans and gods and was called Father Bull. His wife was Asherah. Do you remember reading the Old Testament about the Asherah poles? They had these poles of different. Asherah was a fertility goddess, and you find all kinds of different types of drawings, usually emphasizing the female aspect of what people would be like as a fertility goddess of fertility. Many times Moses commanded Israelites to get rid of the Asherah poles in Deuteronomy 7:5. Well, what were they? Well, they discovered, hey, these were gods. This was the wife of El. But he didn't want them to worship El or worship Asherah, because he was the only true God. The most important children of El and Asherah, the most important child, I guess you see, of Asherah was Baal or Baal. Do you remember anything in the Old Testament talking about Baal? You read about Baal, and you remember who was the guy that went up on Mount Carmel and challenged the 400 priests of, I think it was Baal.
Do they have Baal poles too?
I don't think they have. No, they had different things about Baal. There's Baal. He was a, what?
I thought certain people have them today.
Oh, well, there could be some that, there was a lot of things they probably have dug up, but mainly they find him riding a bull, okay? And he's got, I think these are lightning things, and he's a god of thunder, okay? And so there may be some poles with him on it too. But this is a stele depicting the storm god Hadad, called Baal in Canaan. So different places would call this god a little bit different. Stands on the back of a bull. The god Baal was the god Elijah stood up against on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings 18:16. Note how understanding this god as a god of rain gives meaning to the power and challenge of Yahweh. Think about it. Elijah went up there and God told him it was a challenge whose lightning would come down and destroy things, and what would happen. And this is a god of thunder. He's supposed to be in charge of everything. And Moses says, okay, go after it. And he waits and waits. Nothing happens. He says, well, your God must be busy, which technically means he must be relieving himself in the bathroom. That's really what that means. But anyway, so he's got this, nothing happens for hours, Then God said, okay, put make an altar, sacrifice this bull on the altar, make trenches around it, fill it with water, and douse everything, and then pray to me, and I'll destroy it. God he prays to him, comes down and evaporates the whole thing. His fire just destroys everything. Anyway, so Baal was defeated there. You have another one. This is Ashdod, and you can see why it's a female. Okay, they emphasized those things when they did. And this is a female goddess of the Philistines, 7 inches high. Got about that. This is a little, not a great big one. And so this is found in Ashdod. Why wouldn't Ashdod be found in Ashdod? Obviously you would. Okay, this is another goddess of the Philistines. Then, what's interesting too is they didn't know where Ur was, and they couldn't find out for a long time. And finally, they did some excavations and turns up the city of Ur. And in that, they find names, they find all kinds of different cultural things that help them to say that Genesis tracing the ancestry of Israel from Mesopotamia, according to Albright, archaeologists, ancestry is true beyond reasonable doubt. The names are similar. The time was, what they described there was culturally fit into that day. It wasn't just something made up. Genealogy of Esau mentions the Horites in 36. Well, who's the Horites? Anyway, extra biblical findings now confirm that they did exist, and were a prominent group of warriors living in the Near East in patriarchal times. So up until this time, they didn't know. They didn't have any extra. Well, they did know from the Bible, but they didn't have any extra biblical evidence to show that. Then they also, like I said, dug up a lot of the names and the culture of the day. And I'm just reading this off of here, but they said Abraham's genealogy is historical. His name is used in that day. It appears in Babylonia during his time. He came from a part of the world, Ur, and that's what name they used there. You can do that too. If you went and found a common name here, Joe or something, and 10,000 years later they dug it up, well, they're probably not going to find Joe in Afghanistan. Okay, they don't use that name. They're probably not going to find it in they might find it in South Africa, wherever there's English they might. They're probably not going to find it in Uganda or something like that. So it puts Abraham, the term Abraham, into the culture that they dug up in Ur to show, yeah, this makes sense. It fits right into the culture. It wasn't just something created out of thin air. It actually fits in the culture. Does that make sense? So, social customs and stories of the patriarchs in Genesis depicted in the Bible fit well into the social customs of the same period uncovered by these archaeologists. In other words, what they're finding, hey, this even even gives further evidence that this was really true, and it also, in finding those things, it can help you understand the Bible a little better.
It's kind of like today following something like ancestry.
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of what they're, fighting.
Yes. Yeah, because it fits right in. It's not an anomaly.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, what the Mormons say, that Joseph Smith or someone, I can't remember who it was, came to South America and preached to people there, and then intermarried with all the people. Well, they did DNA tests with the American Indians. They don't find any Jewish DNA at all in them. So he just sort of said, this doesn't fit. Not true. Okay, so let's go on a little bit further. The walls of Jericho. Remember what happened there? The Bible talks about Joshua went in to conquer the land. He'd come across the Jordan River, just like they went through the Sea of the Red Sea. And they went across, and they remember they were told to march around the last day 7 times, blow the trumpets, and the walls are going to fall down. Well, the walls of Jericho did fall down. Archaeologist Bryant Wood in 1990, look how close this is. This is just not only 30 years ago, concluded the city of Jericho had been destroyed around 1400 BC. And evidently they found some things where it looks like, I think he said, where the walls had fallen out. But if you think about it, Joshua, according to what the Bible timeline was about between 1446 and 1406, we said he went into the promised land. Well, this guy finds that the city of Jericho had been destroyed around 1400 BC. This would support the early date of the Exodus. Jericho was defended by a lower stone revetment wall and an upper mud brick wall. Brian Wood places Rahab's house. Remember, Rahab was one who hid the people, spies, on the lower wall, and between the lower wall and upper wall. So they found that there's 2 walls. There's this one, which is probably the main one. Then there's this other one. You've got 2 different types of walls, and this is actually sort of living on the wall, and that's where she lived. And so there's evidence that that was really there. And then slide 20 is the pharaoh Merentata stele. It depicts Egyptian god Amun-Re. And this stele is important in that it provides the limit beyond which the late date of the Exodus cannot go beyond. It provides the earliest extra-biblical reference to the term Israel. Because people didn't necessarily think they didn't exist way back then. Israel didn't exist. Well, they dig up this stele, this big stone, or maybe steel is more some type of metal, I'm not sure. And they find it talk about Israel. Around 1230 BC, it says, carried off is Ashkelon, seized upon is Gezer, Yamon is made as that which does not exist, Israel is laid waste, his seed is not. So it's a first evidence of the term outside of the Bible that Israel existed, the idea of Israel, the term Israel, that this nation of Israel existed. And that's 1430 BC, and now Israel's, some aspect of it is being destroyed. So it had to exist there even before that. So it's an archaeological finding that says, well, Israel as a nation existed by 1230 BC, and probably then before that, even though they hadn't found anything before that. Here's an ivory horn, like what Samuel might have used to anoint David as king. I don't know. They found that too. We don't know for sure. Then there's a Moabite stone called the Mesha stele, 9th century BC. It's one of the earliest archaeological finds relating to the Bible. It refers to Omri, the king. Omri and Ahab, they reigned in 785 BC, and the Bible talks about them. We talked about the kings of Israel. Well, there's a couple here that are actually named. And they reigned in 875 BC, and this was a 9th century stone. It was a black basalt stone, 3 feet, 3 inches high. So what?
Writing on there?
What?
Actually writing on there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hard to do.
It's real faint, but yeah, I can't make it bigger, but yeah, that's the next
No,
one.
that's okay.
But yeah, wait a minute, we're going all over the place here. Okay, but it's a black basalt stone that is writing on there. You can sort of see the lines if you look real close. And this isn't, I mean, I don't have the light, but you can see the right. They have lines of written writing.
Right to left.
You know, this is, I don't know what the Moabites did. I don't know how they wrote. I assume from right to left, but I'm not sure. But it's a black stone, 3 feet by 3 inches high, 3 feet 3 inches high. It speaks of King Mesha, king of Moab, successfully revolting against Israel. It says, I am Mesha, king of Moab. I reigned after my father who made this high place for Chemosh, because he saved me from all the kings and caused me to triumph over all my adversaries. As for Omri, king of Israel, he humbled Moab many years, for Chemosh was angry at him, at this land, excuse me. And his son Ahab followed him, and he also said, I will humble Moab. In my time he spoke thus, but I have triumphed over him and over his house, while Israel has perished forever. So there's some more evidence of, well, Omri existed, unless you don't want to accept the extra biblical. So did Ahab, and so did Israel. So these things that are brought up, they bring these terminology and things, okay, just to show that they really existed. Sennacherib prism, dated 689 BC. This is a six-sided backed clay prism. So you got 6 sides, like a hexagon. It's got 6 sides, and they found that. It's black. Let's see. It's it's 15 inches high. How high is 15 inches? About like that. So it's not that big, but it's written on all these different sides about what happened. It talks about Sennacherib's military campaigns, including his 701 invasion of Hezekiah's Judah. Like we talked about, the Assyrians were coming to take over, and they actually took over the north. Remember 722 BC? And they eradicated and deported the Israelites, the 10 north tribes, to Assyria. Well, he didn't stop there. He tried to get Israel too. And so he went down and surrounded Jerusalem. And this is what it says. The king of the Jews in that day in Jerusalem was Hezekiah. He says, and here you go, he even talks about Hezekiah. So it's confirming what the Bible talks about Hezekiah. The Jew, he did not submit to my yoke. I laid siege to 46 of his strong cities, walled forts, and countless small villages in their vicinity, and conquered them by means of well-stamped earth ramps and battering rams brought near the walls, combined with attack of foot soldiers using mines, breaches, as well as sapper work, whatever that was. I drove out of them 200,150 people, young and old, male and female, horses, mules, donkeys, camels, big and small cattle beyond counting, and considered them booty. He himself I made a prisoner in Jerusalem, his royal residence, like a bird in a cage. I surrounded him with earthwork in order to molest those who were leaving his city gates. But it never says he captured it. And if you remember, I think this is the same one where it talks about Hezekiah prays to God, and with all these Syrian soldiers around, and 85,000 of them died in one night, and he retreated back. So, but it's giving some background that, yeah, this really happened. Okay, now here's an interesting thing, Hezekiah's tunnel. And you can still go over to Jerusalem now, and you can walk through that. Talk to Wes, he did that. Now, I didn't get to go to that part, but I was kind of glad because it's only about this high. Wes fits right in here. Anyway, he walked through there. Talk to him about it someday. I don't know if Mandy did too. I can't remember. Maybe she did too. We went over to Israel in 2008, and so that's when he was doing that. But this is an interesting thing. This is a picture of the most famous and most ambitious Israelite water system ever discovered. The tunnel cut beneath the Ophel Hill in Jerusalem. It extends 1,750, a third of a mile, okay, through limestone bedrock. It carried water from the Gihon spring on the east slope of the hill, and they needed this water to come into the city because if they're getting attacked on the outside, they don't have any water, what's going to happen? So they go through this limestone and bedrock, and they cut this. It was cut under the direction of King Hezekiah at the end of the 8th century. You can find that in 2 Kings 20:20. Okay, it talks about King Hezekiah. It was cut by 2 teams of men with hammers and chisels digging toward each other from both ends. Okay, and from one spring, from the spring to another from the pool. They chose for some reason not to cut in a straight line, so it required sophisticated calculations to bring the teams together, the 2 teams. An inscription found in 1880 carved on the tunnel wall, and not until that did they find it, near the pool exit, describes how the 2 teams almost missed each other. At the last hours, each team, guided to the sound of the other team's hammer blows, adjusted its direction to the left to meet them. This is, what was it, 800 BC? No, 700. So it's just incredible what they were doing. But the archaeology uncovered this. And they found, oh, there's an inscription here. Let's read it. See what it says. How are you doing? Okay, there's a lot of little things here. Okay, tablet referring to the Sabbath. And Jewish law was found in King Josiah's reign. We discovered dating back to last half of Josiah's reign, 620 BC. And it refers to Jewish law, Sabbath, and contained Jewish names. So it's just more confirmation of the Jews being there, and they actually existed, and their names were what the Bible says their names was, and they practiced the Sabbath, and they practiced the, following the law. A tablet referring to Jehoiakim, another king. This is a fragmented cuneiform tablet from Babylon. Now, this is in Babylon, so that's way over, way away from the others, away from Judah. And Jehoiakim, one of the last kings of Judah, in 597, he was exiled to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. It shows that this guy really existed, if you're going to take this. And then you have different things. You remember Cyrus, who said, I've got to go rebuild the walls and the temple of Jerusalem because Isaiah told me to? Well, here's his tomb, so you know Cyrus existed. Here's his sons, successors at least. Dates about 520. Then you go on a little further. You remember Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who went into the temple and sacrificed a pig on the altar and got the Jews all riled? Well, here's a coin with his face on it. Antiochus IV Epiphanes dates 215 to 163 BC. Then you go, there's some more coins, and I got a whole thing of coins. What did I do with that? I give it to you guys. Yeah, you can, and so coins say something, and they do things. Here's a Latin inscription of a Judean coin made in 71 AD in Rome, commemorating the Roman victory of Judah. When did that happen? 70 AD. Remember, he went in and conquered Judah and conquered Jerusalem. This is 71. And so what are they doing? Well, here's the I think this is the emperor, Vespasian. Here, he's up here. And if you look close, you can see, I think, the Judeans, the Jews kneeling. Can't see it real well there. But he's their taskmaster. Depicts Vespasian, the emperor of Rome, with his Latin title, Imperator Caesar Vespasianus Augustus Pontifex Maximus Tribunus Plebis Patri Consul III. He's a pretty prideful guy. How would you have so many names? Anyway, on the left is the upright Roman soldier, and on the right, a mourning woman symbolizing defeated Judah. The inscription around these two figures, Judea Capita, captured Judea. It says captured Judea. At the center of the bottom of the letters SC, or at the bottom of the letters SC, which means it stands for Senatus Consulto. That's the Roman Senate. Just like we have today, what we have on some of our coins, where it's minted. And that things that tell you where if it's a D, it's a dimmer.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, they had something like that. Okay. At the center of the bottom are the letters. SC was stamped on the bronze coins produced at the imperial mint to show that they were minted with the assent of the Roman Senate. So Rome destroys Jerusalem and takes over Judea completely. Well, 73 AD, they finally got Masada, but other than that, and they started printing coins about this victory. And so it's a coin evidence of the defeat of Jerusalem. Okay, here's some catapult stones used by the Romans. If they were going to go and make a breach in a wall, these things are giant. You can see this. I don't know how big they are, but I think they're probably this big around. So they had these giant catapults that they put these things in there. And I don't know if that big thing there is where one of them hit or not. But if it did, enough of those is going to break through a wall. Okay, I wouldn't want to get hit by one of them. here's some heavy flint sling stones. Who was one who had sling stones? You remember in the Old Testament? Who? David. What did he do with a sling stone? He hit Goliath, right? And they didn't have, I used to think it was these little things we used to have, you know. But they used some type of cloth or something, and they got so good at it, they could throw these big, I don't know how big these are actually, but I would say they're probably about this big. And just sling them, and he was good at it. Well, Goliath is no longer. Well, that didn't kill him completely. He went and cut his head off. That maybe did. Anyway, here's some sling stones hammered from heavy flint nodules. So they're made out of flint. These were specifically prepared for battle, but they also used smaller ones for water beds. David used sling stones. And then they found other things that we've talked about before. Grinding tools. They would grind up their wheat or their other grain just so they could make bread out of it. It says here, over these smaller flat stones were rubbed back and forth to grind grain. Then you've seen this one before. It's an olive press. So what you do is you have a donkey or something on this other side. You put this big, probably a tree on it, and hook it to the donkey. He just goes around with it, and you put the olives in there, and it just presses. Uh-oh. I hit this. All right. Good thing it didn't fall off. Anyway, it presses the oil out of the olives. This is a characteristic olive press of the biblical period. It has two stone elements shaped out of basalt from Galilee. A long pole set into the upper stone would enable it to be pulled around. The upper stone was pulled over the olives in the depression in the stone, and oil squeezed out of the olives. The oil was used for both food and put in lamps for light. There you go. You get your light lamps over there we went through a while ago. Okay. You doing okay? I want to get through the rest of this. This is called a tell. It's not like telling a lie or something, or telling on. Tell is a mound. Now, what they did in those days is that if you wanted to set up a city, you would go find a little hill, and you'd set up your house and stuff on that hill, or maybe several houses. And then people would come in and destroy it because they took over that area. And so all your stuff would crumble down. But since it's a good place to build, the other people who came in built new things on it. Okay, and then it happened again, and again, and again, and again. And so you get these big tells, these big mounds. So when archaeologists go in, they dig down and find the different strata, and they can tell about what date something is because it's piled up on the others. So that's one thing. They love to do tells that are not broken up or anything, or not disturbed, because then they can really find out what happened, what the culture was like during that day, during the different strata. We were over in the New Testament times. We went to Colossae. Colossae at that time in 2013 was just a big mound. We walked up on top of it, went around. Now they're excavating it. They're starting to dig it out, find out what's inside there. So it was kind of neat just to be on a tell. Anyway, here they have royal signet rings and seals. These were people who were in power. And if you wanted to, you remember they would put a seal on, I think they put a seal on Jesus' tomb. They would have some type of thing that they'd put on, and then they would stamp it with the emperor or whoever it is, authorities' ring. And so if you messed with it, you're going to be in trouble. Oh, I didn't read all this about the tell, but it said, going back to the tell, it says early settlers tended to build a city on a low hill for defense near a water source. When the city was destroyed, another city was built on top of it. The process would continue over and over until you had a big high hill. Archaeologists then dig down layer by layer and can find characteristics of different ages. I guess I said that, didn't I? Okay, now this one here, this is a picture of the Hebrew inscriptions on various signet rings and seals belonging to royal officials of the First Temple period, which dates 7 to 8 centuries BC. They usually read simply belonging to so-and-so, a servant of the king. Seals could be set in ring mountings or hung around the neck as pendants. They usually carried their owner's name and were used to seal documents or containers. To prevent tampering, the scroll would be rolled or folded, tied with a string to which a lump of clay would be affixed, and the seal pressed into the clay before it hardened. This was their way of security, their way of official saying something. You know, it's like they passed a law, okay, or whatever, and this is where it was. Here's a royal jar handle seal found in Judah, about 7th to 8th century BC. It says, belonging to the king. Royal officials seem to have had seals put on storage jars used to gather provisions in the country prepared to withstand Assyrian incursions by Sennacherib in 220. Okay, we're going to transition now to this. And I'll try to cover this before we get too late here. This is the Dead Sea. If you remember when we went through talking about this land up here, this actual ravine here is the Jordan River from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. There's no exiting of water from the Dead Sea. It's 1,300 feet below sea level. It's the lowest, maybe the lowest place on earth. Well, around this were some of the scenes, probably scenes, that when Jerusalem was around Jesus' time, ruled by the high priests and things like that, they didn't like what was going on in the temple. So they decided to go down to a little place that they now call Qumran and build their own religious type setting. And so it was down by the Dead Sea. Qumran is up in the northwest corner right there. Okay. Now this is a Dead Sea. No water can exit. It's evaporating, and so when it evaporates, you have all these salts of different kinds that do this. If you go on and you try to swim in there, it's like oil. You get it on your legs and stuff, and you know, it's supposed to be really good for you. But you can float in there. You can't sink.
Have you ever been in the Great Salt Lake?
No, I've
See,
been
it's
by
like
it.
that.
Yeah,
We went out there once and got to swim in it.
yeah.
You just go out
You're
there and
very buoyant.
Yeah, you're buoyant. You don't sink.
Yeah, this one guy, we were out there, and he got this big rock about this size, this big, and he picked it up and laid it down, and he didn't sink. Okay, here's some Bedouins. Bedouin tent that is moved with flocks as they find forage for their flocks. It's a sheep herder tent, basically. It's a big one for the whole group of Bedouins. Although it looks primitive from the outside, and the inside, the tent can be relatively cool and comfortable. Bedouin shepherds found the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is the biggest, most important discovery for the authenticity and the trustworthiness of the scriptures is the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it was found by these two guys. Well, they think it was those two guys. They claim it, and they think it was these two guys. And let me just read this a little bit. I think I can do that. It says, probably in late 1946 and early 1947, a shepherd boy, and this is talking about one here, of the Tamara tribe named Ahmad El-Hamad, nicknamed, I can't say it, was searching for a lost sheep. He tossed a stone into the cave, hoping to scare the sheep out. But instead, of the bleating of the sheep, he heard a sound of cracking pottery. When he and his friend explored the cave, they discovered that two large jars inside wrapped in linen. They found some ancient scrolls. And so that's his picture, their picture, his friend with him. And this is what the land looks like down there. It's just barren wasteland, it's like if you go up above the Highland Canal
Yeah.
and you have some mounds up there, nothing lives there much. This is even more rugged here. Okay, so this is what it looks like. You have different things where they found these things. There's what they looked like. This is one that wasn't broken, okay? These little, I don't know if you call them pottery, but they're about this tall.
Did
Yeah,
this guy know
see?
what they had?
See how big that is?
That's what that's supposed to be?
That's what that is, a miniature thing of it, yeah. And so they could take these caps off, just like that one, and they found these scrolls inside.
Did they know what they had? Or they found
No, I think they took them into town to try to sell them and make some money.
Oh.
But somebody found them and said, wait a minute, what did you find? And so they went back and they discovered there were many caves with many of these scrolls in them, and not just that one. So here's what it looks like. Now we're looking south, and this is the northwest corner of the Dead Sea. And this is where Qumran is. So it's pretty close to the Dead Sea. You don't need to be close to the Dead Sea, unless you're going to swim in it or something. But you don't drink it. Probably die. Anyway, this is the compound, if you want to call it, the Qumran area. And here's Cave 4, which is right across the ravine here. They had a communal center. This is where they excavated this people's sect there where they lived. They even had an aqueduct that they would bring water, and they'd store water in I think they probably had some cisterns. I'm not sure. But anyway, Northern Cemetery, they found cemetery areas. They found another cemetery. There's Wadi Qumran. Wadi is simply a creek without water. Dry. Unless you have a big rainstorm and then. Okay, so this is where they found, you can't see it real well. But anyway, these are some of the places where they found the different caves. Here's Qumran again, area of caves 1 and 2. Here's the Qumran cliffs. That's what it looks like up there. Here's cave 1, what it looks like from the inside. Okay, these are some of the things that they would find. And they were, I don't know what but see, they were fragments. They had, I think I read about 800 fragments of scriptures, but some of them were really, just a piece, like a centimeter. They're really small. Here's cave 1, what it looks like. Here's cave 4. And it's just showing what these caves and these, and the scenes they took, Qumranites, what do we call them? Took their scriptures and other things, and they put them in these big pottery things, and they stored them. Here's what it looks like on the inside. It's kind of neat. Looking out through the hole. I don't know how they got up there. It's cave 5. There's some of the excavation, I think, of where they were. Here's cave 6. Here's cave 8. The roof had caved in. No more cave. It was used to be there. Cave 10 on the right. Cave 4B. I don't know why they call it B. But anyway, on the left. Now here's what they dug up. This place where these guys live, and they found what they call a scriptorium. Scriptorium is where they evidently copied manuscripts. They'd get old manuscripts and they'd copy them off, and they make new ones. And they found an inkwell in there. And that's what made them think that that's what it was. Yeah, this is an excavation of scriptorium and study rooms in Qumran, where the Siege copied studied manuscripts, perhaps even the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's what it looks like from an aerial view. Now, a unique find, pretty quick, before I get to that. There were 25,000 pieces of manuscripts. And so they laid them out on these long tables, and they tried to put them back together.
That would be.
And so they probably from different caves here. They didn't mix the cave stuff, but trying to figure out, what is this? How can I put this together? What did it really say? And so you had things like this. See how they're really kind of deteriorated.
You said one of the containers that broken, the first came.
They threw a rock in and it broke
Oh,
it.
that's what broke it.
Yeah. They thought it was. What was that?
Yeah.
Go check that out. So anyway, these are the things they found. Some of them were not in too bad a shape. Worse, and even worse. And then others were just little centimeter square. Then they found this too. This is a copper scroll, 2 of them. This is made out of copper, real thin. And it says, it talks about where there's some treasure buried. And they used somehow stamped the thing to make the different letters. And they had to take this apart by really carefully.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, see, did I write anything about that? It's a unique copper scrolls. So these are pretty neat. But I don't think they ever found it, even though they tried to follow it, I don't think they ever found any of the treasure. But the Isaiah scroll was one of the few that was fully intact. 24 feet long, I think. 10 inches tall, I think. Like this. I gave you the 35 example the first time. Some of them were that long. This was evidently 24 feet long. And so it was found in Cave 1. And an incredible scroll. And it is very, very close to what we have. Hardly any deviation from the Isaiah scroll that we have now today. And this is 2,000 years after what we have today. The nearest manuscript, we'll talk about this pretty soon, nearest manuscript we have is about late 900s AD. And so there were about 900 years of gap between this and our earliest, our youngest, our scroll that we had that was in 900. And so people thought, well, surely there's all kinds of mistakes. I mean, that's 1,000 years. But it's really, really close. A few things that might be changed. And you can see sometimes they would interpolate things here.
Oh, yeah.
See, they wrote it in it. They left it out. Oh, we're going to put that back in, you know. Or sometimes scrolls were edited and commented on by the people who were reading them.
Oh,
So you don't always know, well, is this a comment or is this? But you can find copies of these, and you can find where it was probably added into later on, at least in the Greek canon. I don't think they had a proofreader. What they would do, at least for the Greek ones, is you'd have a group of people like this. Say there's 10 people in here. There'd be someone up here reading it, and they would be writing it. And so they'd have to be really technical about what they did, or they could make a mistake. And there were some mistakes, but they haven't found anything that was critical. Oh, hang on. Now, if you want to study more about the discoveries of archaeology, you can take this here, and I don't know if I can get it to you, but you can go into here. Let's see, do I have this? Maybe I have it here. Put that in your search. Nope, that's not what I want. Let's see if it's up here. Ah, it's not. Let's see if I still have it on there. Okay, so you can take that URL and you can go and you can find what were the top 10 biblical archaeology stories of 2023. And you can go back 2022, 2021, 2020. Although if you go back, you probably have to pay for it. These are okay. I mean, they don't charge anything for this, but you can look at this. Top biblical archaeology stories, archaeology evidence of Solomon and Sheba. It goes, but talks about that. Second Temple period. That's when they built the Second Temple, 515. A receipt found in the city of David. Early sayings of Jesus text. The sayings are very similar to sayings found in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, as well as the non-canonical Gospel of Thomas, excavated in Aronicus, Egypt. The papyrus is one of the oldest known collections of Jesus' sayings. So they're still digging up things that people said Jesus said. The race to read the Herculean scrolls. Anyway, yeah, in early 2023, a group of researchers and investors announced that they were offering $1 million prize to the first team to read the famous Herculean scrolls, a collection of more than 1,800 charred documents buried during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. You probably went to Mount Vesuvius. It's in Rome, right around there. While no one was certain what the Herculean scrolls contained, scholars suggest the massive corpus may contain works of Stoic philosophy, ancient history, and even references to the earliest Christians. The competition has already begun, been given out, some of its early prizes. How would you like to have $1 million? Okay, so where am I at?
Did you go to the city?
Excavating Pompeii's middle class. Again, Mount Vesuvius. Early Israelite curse inscription from Mount Ebal. 2023 also offered more news on the Mount Ebal curse tablet. I found a curse tablet. You can see them right there. I think that's what they are. In May, this research team finally published their academic article on the object, and they claim it's one of the most important inscriptions ever found in Israel. Other scholars, however, were quick to come out against the team's conclusion. Some even suggested the tablet is more likely just a simple Bronze Age fishing weight. Contains no writing at all. So you got these scholars that debate all this stuff. Complete Book of the Dead, discovered in Sagara, I think it is. Excavated at the site of Sagara, south of Cairo, an Egyptian team made an impressive discovery, a complete copy of the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, measuring an impressive 52 feet long. The papyrus was discovered in the tomb of the wealthy Egyptian named Ahmose, who lived around 300 BC. Yet another amazing Egyptian discovery, and so forth. The Hittite cult center uncovered in Turkey. Meanwhile, archaeologists in Turkey announced the discovery of Zipalanda, one of the most important cult centers of the Hittite Empire. Especially significant was the discovery of several monumental public buildings, including a large Hittite temple and unique circular structure that may relate to the worship of the city's ancient and widely revered storm god. The Bible talked about the Hittites. Ancient Amorite language discovered. Finally, one of the most intriguing discoveries of 2023 was 2 tablets containing a bilingual inscription written in both Sumerian and Amorite. Although much is known about the ancient Amorites, including King Hammurabi and his famous law code, scholars knew little about the Amorite languages until this discovery of the new tablets, which provided a list of common Amorite words. Okay, that's the last one. That's 10. So, there we go.